Weight stack, weight stack. I just made a wooden weight stack. Can it go up and down? Yes it can, cause it's a weight stack. Watch out! Here comes a wooden weight stack. Oh, hey there! Didn't see it, was just trying to be like Spiderman on my new and improved cable pulley station with weight stack that also is plate loaded. How excited is that? So I made this cable pulley machine 5 years ago, and back in the day it was plate loaded, if you remember this guy here. Now almost 2 years I have been thinking, can I make my life easier by adding a weight stack to this awesome cable pulley machine? And I was thinking, how can I make this myself? I was looking for cheap weight stacks, couldn't find them. I was looking for concrete, didn't like it. Metal, can't work with it. But wood is something that I can work with, and that's very malleable in my opinion. So I took wood, I added some metal plates into them, and then I made it plate loaded, and that is what this video is all about. I'm going to show you how I made this thing here, something that has been brewing for 2 years in my head. And the past 3 weeks, I have been really working hard on making sure that I got everything right, that I thought about everything, prototyping in my head. And then the last 5 days, I was really working on this thing physically so it could become what it is right now. And I'm very excited to show you how I built this. So a weight stack makes it easy to change the weight of a cable pulley machine. So with this pin here, if I put this here, I can have 10 kilograms. If I put it here, boom, my weight is changed up to 25 kilograms. So this weight stack here holds 35 kilograms of weight. And if I want to add even more weights, I can add up to 1 plate on this little knob here. And my maximum plate is 25 kilograms, 25 on both sides. So that means that with this weight stack and my plates, I can go up to 85 kilograms. But 35 kilograms can be changed easily, and that is absolutely amazing for my accessory exercises, which I do like 80% of the time. So let's start with the build. For the build, we're going to do 4 main parts. And the first part is going to be the easy part and the most repetitive part, and that's going to be all the regular blocks with the weights. And then we're going to the top block, because that one is a little bit different, and that one holds the Selector rod, which is the big rod with the holes in it, so you can change the weights easily. And then the third part will be the one that holds the plates, because that one is a little bit special. And then we're going to put it all together in the fourth part, the assembly. So the plans for this build will be in the description down below, hopefully sooner rather than later. And then what you need is going to be now on screen. So this is what I initially thought I would need, and this is with the text what I actually needed. And then the tools we need initially, and then also in text what I added afterwards. Okay, let's start with the easiest part, but also the most repetitive ones, and that is the weight blocks. For that, you're going to need the most perfect wood, and I found a good beam at my local hardware store. This one is 6 centimeters by 14.5 by 2 meters and 10 centimeters. So I actually need 2 of them. Then you have to cut them into lengths of 50 centimeters. So make sure that is as accurate as it can possibly be, because from there on all the measurements will be based off of that, and accuracy is key if you want this to operate smoothly. In total, I'm gonna need 7 weight blocks, of which 5 of them will be the regular ones, which we are discussing right now. So before I start with everything, I had to weigh each and every block of 50 centimeters separately, and I had to number them so I knew which one weighed how much, because one beam had a density of 0.5 grams per cubic centimeter and the other one had 0.4 grams per cubic centimeter. So for the regular blocks, I opted to use the heavier ones because those are going to be the most standard ones, and the end will come at 5 kilograms of weight per block. Now, it's not a guarantee that we're going to hit 5 kilograms spot on. For that, we're going to calibrate the blocks afterwards. In these blocks, what we need is 2 pockets for the half kilo plates, then 2 holes for the guiding posts, 1 hole for the Selector rod, and then 1 hole for the Selector pin. Now let's start with the pockets for the weights, because they are going to determine the position of the holes for the guiding posts. I want the weight plate to be dead center of the 3 sides of the wood. And then the distance between the pocket and the guiding post also has to be that distance from the side of the wood. I knew from the beginning that routing perfect circles would be a very difficult task, so I opted to buy a drill bit that is the diameter of the plates and then route the inside out. So I started routing centimeter by centimeter, and that made a huge mess. Also, my router didn't go deep enough. Luckily for me, I had to go by my parents that evening and I could borrow a bigger router bit. Now, my dad also gave me the advice to chisel the majority of the chunks out and then just route the bottom side out. Now make sure that you always test fit whether or not all the plates are flush and you don't want them protruding out of the blocks. Next up, we're going to drill 3 holes, 2 for the guiding post and 1 for the selector rod. I chose to do these 3 holes the same diameter, 44 millimeters, because that is the drill bit that I had, and that's also the drill bit that I used for the same guiding posts when this was plate loaded. And that gave me plenty of wiggle room in the guiding posts, and because the diameter of the selector rod is a little bit bigger, we're going to have a little bit more of a precise fit with the selector rod. So not that you can drill all the way through, but if you can, don't drill all the way through. Just drill down until you see the point coming out on the underside, and then drill from the underside up so you can leave a smooth surface in your wood. So in order to drill all these holes straight and me not having a drill press, I bought this attachment for my drill so I can drill perpendicular to a surface. And then finally, the hole for the selector pin will be in the center of one side. So I plan on using a 10 millimeter pin with 140 millimeter length. So the hole will be 12 millimeters. So we still have some leeway there. The length of the drill is about 11.5 centimeters, so I used that whole length to drill through. And because this jig has these pegs that come out, I used that to center the drill perfectly and then just drill through, and that made a beautiful hole. The next thing we're going to do is a top block plus the selector rod. Now, the reason these two are together is because the top block is going to make sure that the selector rod is as straight as possible, because the straighter the bar goes up and down, the smoother the operation, so the selector rod won't hit any blocks underneath it, and also it's going to be a lot easier to put the pins in if the rod is straight down. Also, the top block is not going to have any weights because I want that to be as smooth of a finish as possible. Now the rod is a galvanized steel plumbing pipe that's threaded on both sides of 1 inch, and that's half a meter long. The thread comes in handy because that way we can put up a cap, and in that cap in the center I drilled a hole so I can attach a bolt with a hook on, and that way we can secure that to the cable later on. The top block will have 2 holes for the guiding posts and 1 center hole for the rod. Now the center hole needs to be snug fit for the rod, so the rod is held also as straight as possible. For that I used a 35 millimeter drill. And then we'll add a hole through the block and the rod of 10 millimeters, preferably in the center, just for the aesthetics, so that we can lock up the up and down position of the rod as well. So now comes the most difficult part, drilling the selector pin holes. I put in a wooden dowel into the galvanized steel pipe. That way, when I drill through, I'm going to have like a tunnel that connects the hole in the front to the hole in the back, and that way you don't have to fidget around with your selector pin and you can go whoop all the way through. The best way I've found to drill the holes is by clamping each block to the top block, because the top block is already set in place, and then we're going to drill through. Now, obviously, because our hole in our weight blocks is a little bit bigger, we need to really center the rod so it doesn't wiggle or it doesn't move on us as we're drilling. So for that I made a little jig. That jig holds the up and down position of the rod, and then I used a 5 millimeter drill bit just to check whether or not we were in the middle with the rod. So for these holes I used a 12 millimeter drill bit. We're going to use a 10 millimeter pin, so 12 millimeters gives us that leeway that we had previously in the weight blocks as well. Again, here I learned that the old saying holds true, and that is buy cheap, buy twice. So I bought a 12 millimeter drill bit of 7 euros. I struggled a ton. So the first hole I spent about 15 minutes to get to the first part, and then going all the way down I spent like another 15 minutes. For the next hole it started to become 20 minutes to the top layer, and then the bottom layer I didn't even get through with that drill. So I was really struggling, basically because my drill was already dull. Then I went to the store and I spent a little bit more money. 22 euros for a drill bit that just ate it through the holes. It was crazy. In 2 minutes I made a hole and 2 minutes to go through, so it was actually smooth sailing from there on. Next up, we're going to cut off these selector rods because it can't go through the floor. So for that, I used like 2 centimeters underneath the last hole, and that was like plenty of room. Make sure that you pull out the dowel before you cut the rods, and then I put in the dowel again, and then I left another 2 centimeters of that dowel, and then I cut it also. Because I'm using a rubber tile underneath, which I'm going to drill a hole in, I'm allowed to let the dowel protrude a little bit underneath the last block, so that's perfectly fine. So now it's time to make this weight block plate loaded, and we're going to do this with the infamous pole holders. These are the things that people didn't seem to find when I originally made this cable pulley machine, and we're gonna use them again. Now, because this thing is already very wide, what I did was I put one in the front and in the back. Because I'm not planning on adding a lot of weight, basically only 1 plate at max, and because I have calibrated plates with the maximum plate is only 27 millimeters thick, I was able to cut this off at about 35 millimeters, and that gives me still plenty of room. And because the weights are heavy and this thing goes only up and down, I don't see them falling off or anything. So this block here is basically the same as all the other ones, but I put this thing around the selector pin hole, so I can still use that block of 15 kilos, like this, boom. And because these pre-cut holes are in the wrong place, I had to drill some new holes here. Now, I did this one with a more expensive drill bit of 6 millimeters. I put in 6 centimeter long screws so that they would be held up plenty. And in order not to trap the block below or above it with this thing, I put some washers behind this plate on one side so that it still gives me plenty of wiggle room in order to go up and down. Now, in order to finish off these blocks for the assembly, what I did was I routed out the top block, I rounded off the edges here, and I also rounded off all the edges on the sides here. What I also did was I routed out the selector pin holes because that makes it easier to drive in the pin. What I also did was I rounded out the hole where the selector pin goes so that when it hits, it's guided by hopefully this chamfer here to go into the hole. Before the assembly, what I did, I weighed every block so I knew exactly how much it weighed. And then when I add the 3 kilograms per block, I know exactly how much they are. And then when I later want to calibrate them, I still know how much to add later on. And now it's assembly time. Actually, not a lot has to happen. All I needed to do was to remove the cable and remove the poles in order to put in the weight stack. Then, because we are going a little bit wider than we previously went with these poles, I had to make a new connector block here, boom. In order to dampen the weight going down, I used a rubber tile of 3 centimeters thick. I drilled in 3 holes, 2 for the pole holders and 1 for the selector rod, so that I can still have some leeway here. And that's mainly for that wooden dowel that we cut off a little bit longer than the selector rod. Something that's very important here if you're modifying or if you're making this is that, so between the beam here and your holes, you're still able to put in the pin. And 18 centimeters seem to be a sweet spot for this particular pin, because you don't have to drive it in straight. You can still go from an angle, but you still have to have enough room to do so. So I moved this back 10 centimeters from its original position. So that means that also the top pulley had to move. The idea with the top pulley here is that the cable goes straight down from here all the way up into the weight block. And then I added this nice lettering here with a stencil. Also, the advantage of adding these half-kilo plates is that you can do the full assembly without any hassle, and then in the end we just added in all the plates and it was very easy. We didn't have to hassle with 5 kilogram blocks all the time. So yeah, I think we've made a point into the video where the build is complete and it's montage time. Let's go! So there you have it, guys, the proof that we can make a wooden weight stack for a DIY cable pulley machine that's also plate loaded. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it. Head down into the comment section to say hello. If you have any questions, also the comment section, that's what it's for. And I guess I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out!